So in this next step, let's build a new user creation file. So what we'll do is inside of our login project here in the root, we'll just close include for now. We'll right click and say new file, and we'll call this new user. So inside of this new user, I'll start out by just ending the PHP tag here, and I'll add a simple HTML form. So we don't need to linger on how to create HTML forms because they are pretty simple and straightforward. So this just has a username and a password. It doesn't go in and check if the password is correct in 2 fields and compare them at all, but it just has a username, a password, and a submit button. The action is for the document itself, so just re-update this document with the method post. So let's focus on the script part. We'll start by requiring the different files we just created. So set up a require once for both the session, the connection, the function, and then we'll run the confirm logged in function because you need to be logged in to create a new user. So if you need to access this file without being logged in, let's just say for creating the first user into the database, you simply just have to go to the line 5 here, confirm logged in, and just comment it out. Then you will be able to access this without having logged into the system. Now what we want to do is we want to set up an if statement that will check if the form has been submitted. So we'll say if, and we'll check for the isSet state of our post submit button. So inside of this if statement here, we want to perform our user creation. We'll start out by just creating the script, and then I'll show you how the database is set up. So first of all, let's set up 2 variables, one for the username and one for the password. So for all the inputted data that we have, we want to run 2 functions on it. So we want, first of all, to run the trim function, which will remove white spaces and tabs and stuff like that in the front and the back of the entered string if the user, for instance, had copy pasted something that had a tab, for instance. Then we want to run the MySQLi real escape string because this will sanitize so that we don't get any SQL injections and people don't mess with our database. So the real escape string needs the connection string, so we need to give it the link, and then it of course needs the user. So we need the exact same thing but for the password, so we can just copy paste it, and instead of calling it username, we'll say password. And instead of the user, we need the pass from the form down here. So next up is we want to prepare for the function that will hash our password. So what we'll set up is how many iterations this should use. So we'll just set up a variable here and we'll call it iterations. We'll set this equal to an array, which we can do by just using angled brackets here. And we will set the cost label to a value of 15. This is pretty high, but it also means that it iterates the hashing algorithm 15 times on our password. So next up, we want to set up another variable that actually will store the hashed password. So set up a variable, call it hashed password, and we'll set it equal to the password hash function. So what the password hash function needs is it'll need the inputted password. Then it needs to know which algorithm to use. And in this case, we'll use bcrypt, password bcrypt. And then finally, we can add our options, which in this case is only our iterations. So now we basically did all what we need to do with our password and the username and everything. So now we can put it into the database. So let's set up this SQL statement first, and then we'll go into the database and set that up as well. So let's set up a query, set it equal to insert into, and we'll insert it into users. And we'll insert the user and the pass. The values that should be inserted here are now our username and our hashed password. So what we'll do here is we will set a quote and we'll set a curly bracket as well, because these can be complex and they can basically destroy the query. So we want to put them into parentheses. So here's the username and here the hashed password and a semicolon at the end. So let's run the query by setting up a result equal to MySQLi query. It needs the link, of course, and it needs our query. So if the result gives a true value back, we will set up a new variable that we call message, because then we can output something to the user's screen if everything was successful. So message, we'll set message equal to user created. Else, well, we probably get an error. So what we want to do here is we want to say message is now equal to user could not be created. And let's concatenate the message dot an equal sign with a break and the MySQLi error message. And it needs the link. So that's the basic script. Let's just set an output for the message and then we'll look at the database setup. Above the H2 here, we'll set up a line of code. And this is a basic if statement. So if empty message, and we'll say if it is not empty, then what we want to do here is we want to echo. First of all, just put it into a paragraph, dot, and then we want to echo the message. And want to finalize the paragraph here, and that's basically it. So if the message isn't empty, it'll output the message, otherwise it won't do anything. So let's take a look at the database. So as you can see here, we're inside of PHPMyAdmin, so localhost/PHPMyAdmin for my server here. And I want to set up my new database. So I'll click Databases here, and I want to give my database a name. We specifically looked for the login database, so we called it login. You can of course call it whatever you want. I will change my char set here to UTF-8, so UTF-8 bin, and I'll click create. So I want to set up a new table to store our users. So this one I called users. And what I need here is I need an ID, I need a username, and I need a user password. If you need more than that, like user access level and stuff, you can of course add more columns. But for now, I will only need the 3. I'll click go. So in here, I will need my ID number, which is an integer. This is my index primary. So I'll say okay to that. And I will also set auto increment on. Then I need my user. So set up the user. This is a varchar and will allow for usernames of the length of 50 characters long. Then we need the pass. This is also a varchar, and the bcrypt or blowfish algorithm will output a 60 character long varchar. So that's basically what we need. So we can click save, and now it's created. So if you go back and comment out the confirm logged in, then you can actually access the create new user file here. I'll just set up a username here, Cubic Brain. I'll set my password to be 123456. And then I'll click create. It'll run through the iterations and say user created. If I go back to my database and I click browse, I should now see my ID number, my username, and then the hashed password, including a salt and an iteration count and the algorithm. So in the next part, we'll focus on how to actually log in and also how to log out. So thank you for watching.